Hola, compañeros. It's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. And the answer to the question posed by that video title is no, D&D is not dying. It is probably entering a slump. I've been saying this pretty much since I started this channel periodically on the subject of D&D's place in the zeitgeist is that it's, going to, if not already have entered a period where its natural, oscillation cycle of popularity and dispopularity is sliding into the point where, as the group of kids who were brought in when 5th edition first came in get older, they're going to start perceiving D&D as being childish. It's not going to be the hip new thing. With Stranger Things off the air and the D&D movie still, like a year away from being out, there's not a whole lot to keep it alive and fresh in the culture. And after a couple years, anything's going to be stale, especially to trend hoppers who weren't really into the hobby because of a genuine, attraction to the concept of role-playing games, but just because it's the thing that everyone's doing and watching and you want to be in on it, kind of stuff. D&D's been around a long time, and it's gone through these oscillation patterns before. It goes through little surges where it's a hot ticket, and then it goes through a phase where no one wants to touch it except for the hardcore fans. And so basically, what's going to happen with this new batch of role-playing game recruits that have been built over the last 5 or 6 years is that they're going to split off in 3 different ways. Some of them are just going to stop playing role-playing games. It's not cool anymore. They've gotten older. They're now in college or have jobs. God forbid they might, try to start a family or anything like that. But regardless, life's general crush is too distracting, and it's just time to walk away from this little stupid little hobby that they don't have time for and just sucks up money, especially if they're the DM. There's another category of people who the role-playing game bug has bitten them, but they're tired of D&D, and so they're going to move on to something else, whether that's an OSR game or an entirely different game with different rules and different scenarios. It doesn't really matter to the purposes of what I'm talking about. It's just there's going to be a significant chunk of people who just leave the plantation entirely. And then there's going to be that third group that will actually try to stick it out with D&D. Now, something that is a bit different that's going on right now that might not have been present in previous iterations of this cycle is the fact that the last few years, Wizards of the Coast's marketing has, whether intentionally or not, might be subject to some debate, but they've alienated a chunk of their own hardcore loyal audience, and now that sales are in a slump and people are moving on to better things. And I would imagine as there's less general player interest, they're probably seeing a slump in the, non-book related merchandise sales and all that kind of stuff too. Less people are buying little owlbear plushies and all that kind of stuff. And only the dungeon masters really purchase anything for the books and the playing cards and the map sets and the minis and all that kind of stuff. And some of those DMs who've learned to DM from 5th edition D&D are going to move on, as I said. So of that little core group of people who are still inclined to play D&D, they've also alienated a little chunk of them to not want to play D&D, at least not 5th edition D&D. They might be going back to playing older editions that they were more familiar with in the past, or they'll move on to one of the various OSR variants. And when your sales are slumping and your job's in the line, hopefully that might now be making them shit a few little bricks. Spelljammer underperformed. The Dragonlance module that's about to come out, I'd be willing to bet, is going to underperform a bit. I mean, the people who are the most interested, have the most loyalty and knowledge about Dragonlance are in that category of people that Wizards has kind of been shitting on for the last few years. And considering that, they just had a new vice president put in charge after this quarterly report came out, saying that Wizards of the Coast is in a slump. And albeit without actually getting to see what the real internal metrics, all we know is that Wizards of the Coast underperformed. I mean, our ability to parse between how much of that is Magic the Gathering and how much of that is actually Dungeons and Dragons, is a subject to some debate without actually seeing the real internal paperwork. But the fact that they replaced D&D's vice president you know, I guess could be seen as a sign. Uh, and yeah, they can't really afford to lose anybody right now, and it's kind of too late to turn the train around. The enthusiasm for one D&D kind of reminds me a little bit about how Lord of the Rings of Power went. At first, when it was announced at one D&D, there's a group of people who are like, "No, this is going to be great," and then there's the people who are like, "No, this is going to suck," and they kind of align against each other a little bit. But as time goes on, the people in the first category who are like, "No, this is going to be great," the more they actually look at it, the more they start to like, but is it? They start kind of second guessing that, in the way that there's people at first who are like, "No, Rings of Power is great, fuck all these asshole incels who are saying it's bad." But now that a few weeks have passed since the season finale, their own opinion is starting to kind of turn, and you're starting to get the more honest appraisal of like, yeah, it was lackluster and did kind of fuck up the lore, and I'm not sure if I like that kind of stuff. I'm starting to see kind of a similar thing going on with one D&D, just in various gaming channels and how they're titling their videos and doing their thumbnails and all that kind of stuff. So they have kind of put their ass in a crack. The slump is natural, and hypothetically, if Stranger Things gets another season, or when the Chris Pine D&D movie comes out, and if it's not complete and total horse shit like the older D&D movies, then maybe, just maybe, they might be able to get their legs back under them. But unfortunately, as the culture turns, if the youth culture starts to become more firm in thinking that D&D isn't hip anymore, or it's something that they were doing when they were little kids in school, but not really for them as adults, the downward end of this oscillating cycle might last a while, shall we say. But Hasbro, as the holding company, they own tons of IPs, and they've all of them have spans of time where like Transformers is high in popularity and the Transformers is low in popularity. It doesn't mean that they throw out the entire IP. They just either throw some money into making a TV show or another cartoon series or another Michael Bay movie or something to get Transformers back in the zeitgeist, or they wait a little bit and let the brand cool and then do a relaunch. Really, that's kind of the problem that D&D has, is that they've pre-announced one D&D way too early. I think that also kind of cuts the wind out of their sales of book sales for these last few 5th edition products that'll spool out before one D&D premieres, because they've basically told everyone that 5th edition is a dead brand, so why waste your money on stuff that's about, to be obsolete, shall we say. I mean, there's of course going to be people who like 5th edition and still wanted to see these books and still will get them and check them out and use them. But if they're in a slump, they can't really afford to alienate anyone who might otherwise be inclined to spend some hard-earned money on their books. And so they might not be dying, but they are maybe finally, on some level, facing the repercussions of some of their bad marketing and fan handling decisions that they've made over the last few years. And I'm not going to say that's sad, because, you get the hole that you dig for yourself, so to say. So, I don't think it's going to destroy Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro by any stretch of the imagination. D&D will rise again from the ashes like a great and powerful phoenix. But not today. And so, until then, hit like and subscribe and stay waspinated.